Sean Elo Rivera, co-chairing today's Reinvestment Task Force meeting with Supervisor Montgomery Stepp. And I will call this meeting to order at 2:03. If we could have folks introduce themselves, and I'll start immediately to my right, Mr. Russell.
Stephen Russell, San Diego Housing Federation.
Peter Armstrong, Wakeland Housing and Development Corporation.
Adolfo Ventura, MAC.
Coffee Reed with San Diego Habitat.
Chuck Sinke, U.S. Bank.
Jimmy from Liz San Diego.
Darren Houston, Citibank, stepping in for Sergio Quero.
Antonio Barbosa with Wells Fargo Bank.
Angela Zappia with Accessity, alternating for Elizabeth Schott.
Daisy Crompton with the Housing Commission. I staff the Reinvestment Task Force.
And I'm Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, and thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 2, and that's non-agenda public comment. I would just ask if we have any non-agenda public comment at this time. Doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on to.
All right, so item 3 is our task force member comments. Do we have any member comments? So none? Daisy, did we? Okay. All right, okay.
I guess we're winding down.
Yeah.
We're winding down the end of the year. Yeah. Yeah, that could be it too. Okay, let's go to item number 4, and this is the approval of the minutes for our last meeting, which was on October 3rd. If there are no changes to be made, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the October 3rd meeting. Okay, that's Stephen Russell, and that's Peter Armstrong. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got our staff report. Daisy, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. Hi. Maybe everyone's speechless this week after the election. I know I've been struggling to find the words to say here, and I can't. Except that we do know that people are hurting, they're angry, and prices are high, and houses are unaffordable. That sounds like our work. So I've been doing a lot of thought on what we can do. I'm sure everyone has. I want to thank our alternates for being here and their organizations for finding people to come step in, because we always want to have the voice of the organization even when we can't have the person. And many of you, especially Darren and Chuck, are familiar to the RTF. You've been in meetings, participated, helped, and Darren, I welcome you to this side of the table too. You came as a speaker representing NARAB, and also we're on our executive committee for Worth, so welcome back. I want to thank, since this is our last meeting of the year, our chairs for sure, and all of you. We had such an accelerated, compressed schedule this year. We packed so much in thanks to our chairs are really ambitious and want to make sure that we're covering these things, and it's not going to slow down from here for sure, as you'll see from the last item of the year. One thing that really stuck with me is, that when we kicked off our first meeting in June with insurance, and that also with the horrible floods from January in the back of our head, I think this is going to keep coming back and back, and we're seeing more and more articles about how it's affecting the cost of even affordable housing and these projects, and certainly, that'll play also into the inflation that we're seeing this year, both in insurance but also in these projects. We will see that in some of the survey numbers that we get back later today. But again, thank you all. Thank you to our audience and our community for all of your work and support during the year too. As we look to next year, as usual, we will not be voting on a calendar for next year. It hasn't been determined. It's not determined until we know who our chairs are. And that happens from the City of San Diego in December and from the county in January. But we'll move pretty quickly to set up the schedule then, so the meetings are more spread out next year. And I'll be working with staff right after this meeting to even just sort of get some dates now in case, in the hopes, we have the same chairs next year. But we'll see what comes when we have the appointments. That is the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daisy, and I will just say thank you this year and every year for everything that you do to get us all together and to create these agendas and work with our staff members to make sure that we are covering the breadth of information that we have covered this year. So thank you very, very much. And I know your signature item is on this agenda, so.
I forgot to
looking
thank
forward
both
to
of your
that.
staffs. Your 3 staff members between the 2 chairs have been amazing. They are so smart, work so hard, and know the issues so well. I really appreciate all of you guys.
Thank you. I think they're all in the room to hear that. Okay, we're going to go to item number 6 now, and this is an information item, an update on the Middle March Fund for middle income housing. So we have Debbie Ron coming up from the Middle March Fund, who will provide updates about the achievements of the fund since the group last engaged with the group with them in 2022. Yes, please proceed. Thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Reinvestment Task Force and Daisy. I'm Debbie Ruane with the Middle March Fund. And
Michael Angel with Civic Communities.
as many of you know, I started the Middle March Fund about 4 years ago now after leaving the San Diego Housing Commission, where I had the honor of running the real estate division. And during my tenure at the Housing Commission, I watched as our portfolio became 100% occupied, turnover was slowing down, and homelessness was increasing. So I decided to create a fund that would address what I consider one of the major causes of all of those, which is our lack of middle income housing. So, creating housing for the missing middle. The Middle March Fund is a vehicle for investors, social impact investors, philanthropists, foundations, to invest in housing, very similar to the methodology used for the government investment in low-income housing tax credits to create affordable housing. What I'm trying to do is create mixed-income communities without utilizing government funding. Government funding is finite and competitive, and I felt that the private sector would be a wonderful partner to public funding and to our workforce. So the Middle March Fund raises equity, and it invests it into development and acquisition opportunities. Traditional equity investors take a 15-20% return on their equity. What I was trying to do was create a fund that, since we couldn't lower the cost of land or of labor or materials, what can we trigger to make housing more affordable to build? And for me, it was the capital stack, and it was also policies and procedures and ordinances. So instead of giving the investors in the Middle March Fund a 15% return on their money, they get 6%. So essentially a third less. And since the cost of borrowing the money is lower for the developers, they're able to charge lower rents on a portion of the units that get set aside for middle income housing. And I put an affordability covenant on these that will keep them restricted for 30 years. And middle income housing in the Middle March Fund is considered 80 to 120% of the area median income. Without putting an affordability covenant on, rents are continuing to rise faster than we can catch up to them. And while there are some funds and investors and developers out there who are creating middle income housing, without putting this covenant on them, it's only offered to the people when they first move into the units, and the next year the rents can go up 5, 6, 7%, whatever is needed. I'm trying to stop that from happening, to prevent gentrification, to help create mixed income communities. And also at the 80% AMI level, there's the ability to apply for the Community Reinvestment Tax credit. This is how I looked at the world. On the left-hand side of your screen, you have 0 to 80% AMI. That's typical government-subsidized affordable housing. That is where LIHTC and bonds play. On the far right side is market rate. And what you had in the middle was a gap, and this gap keeps growing wider and wider and wider every month. There is no funding source for it. So that is why Middlemarch was created. I invested with Civic. They are my partner in Middlemarch. Civic Communities put $400,000 into Middlemarch Fund 1. We invested that into a 100-unit building on Redwood and 5th in Bankers Hill. And in exchange for that $400,000, the developer deed restricted 8 units between 80 and 120 AMI for 55 years. The second fund, also a proof of concept, was $750,000. And this went into a 39-unit apartment complex that now has 15 units deed restricted at 120% AMI. And just last week, we did our first capital call for Middlemarch Fund 3, again with Civic as a partner, and Alliance Healthcare Foundation, the Jewish Community Foundation, many others. And we got 31% of the units deed restricted at 100% area median income. This, we think, is one of the largest concentrations of middle-income housing in the city. We're also measuring impact through Tablecloth, a wonderful nonprofit here in San Diego, and capturing from the residents who are living in the Middlemarch units, how has your quality of life improved? What are the things that are better for you? Are you able to save up for home ownership, college tuition, the ability to have health insurance, not have to work 2 jobs? Those are some of the questions we're asking so that as Middlemarch grows, we'll be able to say from the beginning how we have addressed the needs of people who need middle-income housing. So many benefits, obviously, social equity, urban infill, health. There are also many more sites available for middle-income housing because it falls underneath the radar of affordable housing developers because of the costs of tax credit and bond financing. As many of you know, most affordable housing developers are looking for 80 units or 100 units or 200 units. There's a lot of opportunity to be investing in communities of 40 units and 60 units and not using public subsidies, but using the money from our employers and our impact investors in San Diego. And so I am working to reach out to as many lenders, employers, foundations, philanthropists who want to help catalyze some of these neighborhoods that have been overlooked, who are willing to say, you know what, we can't rely on government to provide all of the housing that's affordable. We've got to step in and to look at a way to create housing that hasn't been adequately addressed in the past. These are the financial partners to date, and we continue to grow Middlemarch Fund. It has taken a long time to get to this place, but we are beginning to scale with the support of Civic, Communities, and many others on this list, and I'm very happy to be here to give you an update on the efforts to date. Michael, would you like to say anything?
I'll just read it. Civic's really proud to be a partner in this private sector collaborative to help support affordable housing.
Is that your presentation? I have more slides here I was looking at. I think you put some of them in the middle of
maybe
presentation. Yes.
We changed up the cycle a little bit.
Okay.
8 o'clock this morning.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for being here. I'll just check and make sure there are no public comments before I go to the members of the task force. Okay. Did I take over? Is this supposed to be you? Okay. Any questions, comments? Any questions for Debbie? Yes, please proceed.
Maybe. There we go. So I should disclose I'm a board member of Civic Communities, and I'm well aware of the activities. Obviously, I'm proud to be supporting Middlemarch. You talk a lot about the financing, which I understand is an absolutely critical notion that we need more of these funds. The model has been proven, and we just need more financing. At the same time, you mentioned some regulatory or legislative issues that you think would assist in this effort. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Thank you.
The other one. Maybe you have to turn off
There we go. Yeah, shortly after leaving the Housing Commission, I was honored again to be invited by Mayor Todd Gloria to be on a middle-income housing task force. And we came up with many ideas to help developers build middle-income housing. And some of the initiatives that have come out of that were complete communities, that was in the works, and also looking at opportunities to expedite permitting for middle-income housing production. I also feel that it would be wonderful if we could get the CRA limit up to 100% AMI, because when that was created a long time ago, market rate and 80% wasn't that different. It doesn't have the gap it does now. There's so many areas to dive in on this that I'm trying to keep my finger on the pulse of everything that's going on legislatively, and I believe that there's a ton of support for it. Michael?
And I'll just add specific to permanent financing. So this is the takeout financing. Obviously, developers try to get the most rent in part because that allows them to get more debt financing to repay their construction loan. If we can see more agency, that's Freddie and Fannie or government programs aimed at middle income. I know Cal HFA has a mixed income product, and if those have lower rates and longer terms, that will actually help drive more middle income because they'll get more favorable term on the takeout.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Go to Council President.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation here. I don't know if this is the same question that you're going to ask, but I think the numbers do pop out to me anytime we talk about affordable or middle income. There's a disconnect. There's affordable and middle income and market rate at a technical level, and then there's what those numbers should be in the eyes of everyday San Diegans. And $2,400 a month doesn't sound affordable to most people. $27.99 doesn't sound middle income to a lot of folks. So I'm kind of curious how you all are approaching filling the gap from a technical perspective, but also trying to push those numbers down, and communicate what this actually means to San Diegans who are trying to get their foothold in the housing market?
Right now, a lot of the rents that are middle income are also market rate. The importance is keeping them from skyrocketing, keeping them from increasing in rent every month, every year. So the affordability covenant will keep the units always between 80 and 120. The hope is that the Middle March Fund will be able to raise more money and restrict more of the units at 80 and 100% AMI. Our goal is to push it down as much as we can. Right now, we're trying to grow the fund so that we can get the investors to invest in the deals. And we have to put more money into each deal in order to have the rents go lower. So with more money, we'll be able to go deeper with the affordability.
Got it. That makes sense. And I just one follow-up. I think about how much money it takes from the government side to get an affordable development across the finish line. These are actually relatively small dollar amounts comparatively. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what the gap is and what the bang for buck is in terms of from an investor perspective, not on their rate of return necessarily, but the amount of housing that can be produced with the dollars that are invested here?
The affordable housing, and maybe I hate to put Peter Armstrong on the spot, but affordable developers tend to spend more per unit in construction and rehab costs for affordable housing than they do for market rate housing. Fair enough I mean, it can go up to $500,000, $600,000 for an affordable unit in San Diego, and a lot of the units that I see from the market rate are $350,000, $400,000 a unit. Not always true, but.
I mean, I think the construction costs per unit are, vary widely. Obviously, a lot of stuff downtown, Bankers Hill, much more construction cost per unit than what we're building. But it also depends on just, how many units. If a market rate builder's building 500 units, that's going to bring down the cost per unit. We have to sometimes pay prevailing wages, or sometimes doing a couple projects with, PLAs. That certainly increases the construction costs. I mean, there are some additional costs for affordable housing, maybe different common area amenities. Market rate certainly has its own common area amenities, but anyhow, so I think it's hard to compare. Often I think, the Middlemarch projects are kind of in that range of 50 to 80 units, maybe comparable to what we do often. A lot of the market rate builders obviously are doing hundreds of units. So, anyhow, that's how I'd answer that.
I would also add that bang for the buck is time. The Middlemarch money goes in when the developers have their permits pulled and all of their funding lined up, the rest of their debt and equity. And so the money goes in right when construction starts, which is great. So for the investors, that's wonderful. There's no pre-development risk. And the timeline is truncated because you're not going through the application process for many levels of funding, such as the affordable housing developers do, with sometimes needing 5 or 6 different funding sources. This is much cleaner.
Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. I just say it all the time, but I definitely am a proponent of having mixed income communities. I think that it's an issue around fair housing. And so the policy decisions I think that we make and the funding decisions that we make should, in my mind, promote that we have these balanced communities, and communities that have, what I think the quality of life should be, a standard for all San Diegans, and that does include, having a bunch of different income levels in our neighborhoods and communities. So I would say or ask, like, what is the Middlemarch Fund, perspective on like what you're doing and how that contributes to like this fair housing concept of having these balanced communities, and then what are kind of the challenges and opportunities around that?
What we're trying to work towards is the opportunity to get into communities that have had harder time getting market rate units built. A lot of developers, market rate developers, won't build in certain communities because they can't attain the high rents that they need to pay off the debt and the equity investors. So what Middlemarch wants is to find enough investors so that we can create a community that will have the required low-income housing, that will have the middle-income housing, and that will have market rate. And it won't be the highest market rate, but what it does is it starts catalyzing communities with development that has previously been overlooked. So that is a huge market area for Middlemarch.
Okay, thank you for that. And this is always a challenge for us because we want to, I would say for me, because I want to make sure that the people in the communities and the income levels that currently exist are still able to be in those communities as the development occurs. Of course, everybody wants a grocery store, everybody wants, restaurants to go to no matter what your income level is, right? But sometimes we see different types of development move folks out. So I know you had mentioned that, Debbie, kind of could you go over that one more time of how you mitigate for gentrification in the way that this fund moves forward?
Sure. So what tends to happen is when areas get redeveloped, the rents start out at a certain level, and then it becomes the desired neighborhood for everybody to live in, and so the owner starts charging more and more rent because they can get it. The Middlemarch units aren't able to be raised that same way, so they stay there for 30 years. And it means that the people who live in those units can increase their salaries, they can keep going up. And if they become over income, there are market rate opportunities in the same community. They don't have to leave the neighborhood, the school district. So I'm trying to create places where you can stay and not have to keep getting outed and move far away and drive further to work. So we see this as a vehicle to help with everything from social equity to climate action, because we're keeping people from driving far and creating more of a jobs housing balance.
Thank you so much. If Coffee, please.
Debbie, I'll make no secret of the fact that I think that investments in middle-income housing are incredibly important. I think dealing with it at the equity level is creative and makes a ton of sense. I'm wondering if you could just give us at a high level, don't want to know sort of the sauce behind the scenes, just sort of what your kind of category of investors maybe mix is and where you see the opportunity for attracting more capital might be, just because it seems like, you know, in San Diego, the numbers are big, and with each of your projects, you've been really successful at getting more for each project. I'm just wondering roughly how you see that world, just to paint some context for the group here.
Softball question from Mr. Reed. The challenge is finding investors who are willing to take a 6% return. Even 8, even 10% are where I'm seeing investors ask. That means less deeper affordability, because it's costing me more to get their funds. I think the opportunity exists for leadership here in San Diego County. There is a concept called anchor institutions, which is one I feel very strongly about, where employers who are very disparate, they can be in healthcare, they can be in education, they can be in banking, but they all share one thing: they share workforce. They share employees. And I would love to see an opportunity for our anchor institutions to pitch in and create investors into middle income housing. It's a pretty safe investment in housing in San Diego. And the other thing the Middle March Fund does is it's 5-year investment term. So the money gets returned to the investors once the developer completes the construction or the rehab and converts from the construction phase to the permanent phase. So the investment gets recycled again into another project, or 2 or 3, and hopefully one day it'll be 500.
Question for our partners from the banking institutions. I am curious how you all kind of receive this, what your thoughts are. There's obviously the lending component, but there's the investment piece as well. And I'm curious what needs to be there in order for this to be an attractive option for our banks.
I think, well, and I was trying to figure out what was the option. So I think the introductions, in terms of the community lending and investment team, I don't know if they can do this, but I think it's kind of presenting this opportunity to them and also to the commercial bank side to see if this is something that we can do. So I was trying to figure out which side it was an option for this. So I will connect with them and I'll get back to you.
From Citibank standpoint, we have a specific group, our Citibank Capital, Community Capital Group. And so if you don't have access to that group or have not tapped into it, please reach out to me or Sergio directly, and we'll make sure to facilitate that relationship, because that's strictly all they do is affordable housing nationwide.
Antonio, I'm curious, when you say you're not sure if it's something that they can do, is that for internal reasons? Is it policy?
No, in terms of that group, because it's just connected to the part of the low income, moderate income part of the segment. So the medium income is the one that I don't know if that can align with that specific group.
Got it. Okay.
I guess I would say that, like the purpose of this meeting is to track banks' investments to those low and moderate income CRA requirements. I'm not sure that funding these middle income units meets those CRA requirements currently. So maybe if there's CRA reform and it expands the definition of what's a CRA eligible investment, then I think the community bankers could be investing either equity or debt in these projects and getting CRA credit. Right now, the commercial lending side that Antonio's talking about are, the folks that are making loans to market rate developers.
Actually, that's, I was going to mention the CRA piece of it, right? Because those two segments, the market rate and the affordable housing pieces, the CRA focus for a bank to either make grants, loans, investments is on that one piece, and then the economic return, almost the same as like the investors you're already attracting, right? Like you have to find that place within the bank that's willing to accept a lower return without the CRA benefit that comes with supporting affordable housing. So I know with US Bank, there are ways that we can contribute to a fund either with grants or with EQ2 type investments, and we've done that with our CDFI partners, but mostly because that capital can be traced to CRA activity. So we're able to kind of leverage those products. And I think whether it's CRA reform or just an initiative within the bank to say, hey, we're going to focus on this middle income housing portion because we're kind of meeting these two other pieces. So a little more flexibility or nimbleness on the bank side.
I'm thinking through because of course we're here to, as the next presentation will explain, just based on CRA and kind of what is required, what the report cards are and all that good stuff. But I'm just thinking, and I'm certainly never been a banker, but as far as like any kind of other return on investment that we can quantify, like what does middle income housing do for the economy? Which then in turn may be beneficial to banking institutions. Like it's kind of going outside of the regulatory world, so to speak, because we haven't. I personally feel like there needs to be another system that looks at things this way within government and in the private industry. That kind of looks on those social returns, so to speak. There's a term for it. I can't remember it right now. But has there any thought process at all within the banking institutions around that type of evaluation for any investment, but specifically, I guess, for housing when we're looking at it? Housing just provides so much stability that I feel like it would benefit us all in like financially and in other ways. I don't know if there's any feedback or.
I have a question, maybe to piggyback on that.
Mm-hmm.
My question, I'm not an expert in CRA at all, but are the investments you make because they are for LMI apartments, or is it the geographies that you're investing in? So to the extent that Middlemarch is investing in eligible communities, does that generate the credit for the banks as would it would? Both.
Both, okay.
Both.
Either.
Okay.
I guess to answer your questions, from a banking perspective, yes, we're looking and are forced to meet our CRA goals. From a social perspective, boots on the ground, we absolutely want to increase our footprint within the communities, within the low to moderate income, middle income. We all have programs designed around low to moderate income. We all have desires to do more in that community. Me personally, calling on diverse real estate agents and associations, it's difficult to find qualified buyers to afford and the affordability factor. So as much as we create programs and assistance with no mortgage insurance, for example, on purchase transactions and lower interest rates and such, it is difficult to find that happy medium of what does an 80% AMI or 100% AMI truly afford, specifically in, say, San Diego County. But yes, everyone is pressured to meet our CRA goals, and we all have initiatives around low to moderate income marketing activities and day-to-day, book of business.
I'll turn it over to my co-chair.
All right, so we'll move to item 7. Oh, wait, do we have any public comment on do we need public comment on the last item? Okay, all right, just making sure. Sorry about that. Item 7, annual RTF Community Investment Survey Report. The goal here is to monitor and improve community reinvestment through the Federal Community Reinvestment Act. Each year, the RTF surveys each of the member banks to gather data on their previous year's lending, investments, and grants issued in support of affordable multifamily housing, mortgages for low and moderate income homebuyers, and census tracts, community development, small business, and family financial stability. Daisy, if once you are ready, if you'd like to go ahead with the report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Here we go. As the council president just said, this is our annual report. Every summer, as you know, the banks get some homework. This year we gave everyone a little bit of homework for November because each year we're trying to put more color and detail around what do the CRA numbers mean actually on the ground. But this is a proprietary survey that we developed at the RTF with a combination with both the banks and the community organizations back in 2013. This is not publicly available information. No one else asks for it. And so we are annually thankful to the banks for, especially our members around the table here, for coordinating that data collection because it really gives us a window into what is CRA at the local level. What does this look like? We hear there are CRA dollars, but where are they? A lot of times we talk about, well, affordable housing, that's easy. It's such a big number. It's buildings that you can see. It is groundbreakings with all of you and with the Housing Commission. We're going to talk about some of those today. We've got guest speakers from Affirmed and from Chelsea who will come after me. But then we've also asked all of our folks around the table, the members, to talk about, if you are a nonprofit, did you get grants? If you were a nonprofit that was building housing, did you get CRA dollars for that? And then on the bank side, where are you strong, maybe less so? What did you see last year? This, as we said, this is 2023 because a lot of this data isn't fully vetted and fact-checked by the banks themselves until mid-year the following year. So we're always quite a bit delayed, but still is illuminating, especially when we compare it to longer-term trends, which we'll do with the charts that we have this year. So first we want to set a context, a reminder, because this is a survey that was prepared by the banks that are members of the RTF, it doesn't represent the whole market. There are a couple of other large banks in San Diego's market that are not represented, and then a lot of little banks. We measure size of banks locally by the amount of deposits that they have in San Diego County. And so this year, Chase has edged out. Wells Fargo is the largest, but Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase are traditionally the three largest. Citibank is very small in our market, but as we've seen in the past, and we'll see this year, they have an enormous affordable housing division. U.S. Bank was traditionally about 3% of the market, I think, and then it acquired Union Bank at the end of 2022. So this is the first year that we'll see combined data for both Union Bank and U.S. Bank. And you'll see that in some of the time charts, we have a gap in data on 2021 and 2022 because U.S. Union Bank was in the midst of the merger and didn't report. So the numbers look a little bit funky, and that's also why we didn't do charts in the last couple of years. But we're sort of picking that back up, and you can draw your own sort of dotted line between the data. So this is what it looked like last year. You can see, as I said, an enormous amount of affordable housing development by our RTF banks. This is the first time we exceeded $1 billion in lending. I think we probably see a little bit of inflation in there, but mostly we see a lot of groundbreakings, a lot of checks, and we'll talk about that more later. Mortgages. Mortgages is always a little harder to get your brain around when it shows up here because it's not just the home purchases that we always think about, but a lot of that money is refinancing. If you think about it, only so many houses are bought each year, but you have the existing, all of those homeowners out there who might refinance. In 2023, nobody was refinancing. This is when the interest rates hikes started. Small business loans was a big piece last year, and then investment and tax credits, also, each of them about 20%. This is what it looks like in compared to previous year. You can see the two lighter blue charts, bars, are when Union Bank did not report. So we go from 2020, which had really high numbers. It also included Union Bank's totals. And then down to 2021, 2022. So those are incomplete years in terms of our data collection. Those bars would have been higher. And then 2023, we're back to something that's more comparable because U.S. Bank had fully acquired Union Bank by that year. I want to go forward for a second and talk about the impact of interest rates on this. It was always, in the first couple of years when we looked at the trends and we saw this huge drop from 2013 to 2014, people are like, the banks aren't doing their job. So we did more analysis into it, and it was because of that orange line, which is mortgages, and what I just said previously, that a big piece of that is refinancing. So in 2014, here's the interest rates. So that blue dot is the lowest point of interest rates. And then in 2014, rates started to increase. And this was even before the Feds increased it. But if you remember quantitative easing, which we all suddenly became experts on, and after the Great Recession, that liquidity started to tighten up in 2014. So even though the Fed didn't start increasing interest rates until 2015, 2016, mortgage rates went up right away in 2014 as liquidity tightened. So we really see that when we go from 2013 down to 2014. And then, when I was working with this co-chair staff that I've talked about, they were seeing these charts for the first time and said, look, it really does track with mortgages. If you look at that orange line going up and down at about the same pace as these other lines, with the exception of this last year when mortgages have just fallen through the floor, as we know. When we look at total reinvestment for 2023 by the banks, these are the numbers of sort of by bank, and Citibank was the leader in affordable housing lending. So you see the very tall column on the far right. The green bars are the ones that we like to pay attention to because the percentage of deposits are basically a proxy for how big a bank is in this market, right? So Citibank, as I pointed out, is really small in this market, but does all of these really, really big deals with affordable housing. So their percentage of deposits this I'm going to say this year, but it's 2023, was 27.8%, followed by U.S. Bank at 3.3%, and then the larger banks by 1.1 to 1.7%. Here is this same information presented sort of historically, but by dollars, not by the green bar, the percentage of deposits. So you can see the larger banks tend to be on the highest for just the deals in nominal numbers. The orange is Wells Fargo. The yellow is Chase. Chase had a big spike with some education bonds in 2022. The sort of lower blue bar is Union Bank, which stops in 2020. And then you can see the green bar, U.S. Bank, jumps up from 2022 to 2023 as it includes the numbers from Union Bank. The blue bar that really jumps up from 2022 to 2023 is Citibank with those affordable housing deals. Looking at these main 5 or 6 categories of reinvestment, this was mortgages. Again, you can see everything just collapses in 2023. From on a year-over-year basis, it was down 50% from last year, which was down more than 50% from the year before that. This shows low and moderate income mortgages. This is to LMI people and to LMI tracks by each of the banks as a total dollar amount and the percentage of deposits. Then we look at small business loans. They were up 8% last year, total of $461 million worth. The leader there was Chase, has gone up 2 years in a row. In the middle was Bank of America. When you look at it on dollar values and percentage of deposits, again, you can see Chase, really big number nominally. 1% of its deposits, U.S. Bank, however, 0.5%, and Citibank is 1.3%. This is the big one. Look at that giant bar on the right. So affordable housing loans boomed in 2023, and Citibank did a lot of production that year. I've asked a couple of different folks to talk about that and explain what's going on. I have a couple of theories, but I'm not the expert in this on the ground. Here's the same data just by our individual banks, and again, the green bar showing the percentage of deposits. Tax credits and investments. This is about 80% is LIHTC, another almost 20% is new market tax credits. Again, a pretty good year, 2022. Like I said, is distorted a little bit by one $300 million education bond that JP Morgan reported, so that's their yellow bar spiking. And then the last category is CRA grants and contributions. $6.5 million, up 94%, a great big spike for U.S. Bank. We've asked them to talk about that. A lot of that relates to the acquisition of Union Bank and taking over that same philanthropic giving and replicating it, also a focus on CRA grants. As a reminder, this is not all of the grants and contributions that these institutions make. These are just the ones that are CRA qualified, which is a pretty tight definition around affordable housing, financial capability, and economic development. This shows the same numbers as a percentage of deposit. And this takes us back to the long-term trend and what happened this year. We'll probably hold my questions. That ends my formal report. We have brought in guests from Affirmed and from Chelsea, and I probably just got that backwards. Eric, do you want to come up and maybe speak at the speaker podium here? And we've got slides and a clicker depending on. Yes, you're next. You're first.
This one up here?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
It's the button on the right.
There we go. Hello everyone, thank you for having me. My name's Eric Cushman, I'm a project manager with Affirmed, and I'm here to showcase an example of where CRA funds are currently being used to build 171 affordable housing apartments. So just a quick overview of the equity stack. About $75 million from Chase and US Bank went into Symphony at Del Sur to serve families. Approximately $63 million in tax credit equity was leveraged to make this possible, in addition to $18 million from various other sources. So one of my favorite parts about this project is the location. It's in the Del Sur neighborhood of San Diego. This new construction wrap style features 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, which is pretty unique, and is serving families between 30% and 80% AMI. And some unique parts about this project is that it features 5 courtyard areas, a 4-story parking garage, a community room, on-site laundry, an activity learning room, and a 3-story retail component. So we got a mix of everything at this one, and we're really happy about it. Kind of give where we are with construction. We started about a year ago today. We're in a pretty exciting part where the foundations are poured and framing starting. So this picture was taken about a month ago, and from, if you were to look at it today, that whole open part that you see is currently framed. So it's the exciting part of the project where you see it go up and you can walk through the doors and see how it's going to be. So we're really excited about this one. And we're expected to complete in about a year by the end of 2025. And I'm here to answer any questions about the project, but I just want to thank everyone for the input and seeing where the CRA loans go. This is a very impactful project, and on a personal note, I love seeing families, families be able to grow within this community and have access to the schools and all the wonderful resources of the Del Sur community. So thank you. But any questions for me? No? All right. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you guys having me here today. My name is Jamil Wade, and I'm with Chelsea Investment Corporation. I'm here to do what my colleague just did and highlight some of the wins and triumphs that are made possible through the relationships in this room and the CRA program. Oh, I control this. Let me go ahead and do this. I'm glad he went first because he did a real deep dive into one specific project. I'm going to speak more broadly about a portfolio of Chelsea deals here in the San Diego region that were supported by the investments through the CRA funding. Just a little bit about Chelsea. I'm familiar with most of the people in this room. It's nice to see familiar faces, and I know that everyone here is really dedicated to the mission of housing and improving housing for citizens and for the people within our region. And obviously CRA funding is a big vehicle, a big part of what makes affordable housing work and the investment move forward. So thanks to everybody and all the partners in this room who Chelsea has worked with on these projects. And Chelsea is an affordable developer based out of Carlsbad, so we're local, we're in the region. And we've developed to date somewhere around 145 communities, and we're focused on a wide range of housing, including housing for families, farm workers, seniors, unhoused folks, you name it, we've done it all. And just to highlight a few of the projects that were made possible through CRA investment, we have St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa. This is a project here in downtown San Diego in our East Village neighborhood. It's a total of 407 units, and it was made possible by a lot of the folks and collaboration in this room. It's a 14-story high-rise, so it's a complicated construction product type, and it's a really impactful project. You can see here the total cost is almost $200 million, and the sheer impact of the number of units is great and something that we're really proud of. Mid-City Family Apartments. This is a project in the City Heights area, the mid-city part of San Diego. It's actually an intergenerational community. There's a family project and a senior project that both share the same podium with one level of partial subterranean parking that accommodates the entire project. It was developed in the City Heights neighborhood adjacent to a YMCA that was built maybe about a decade ago. And I think it really highlights what CRA funding can do as far as investment into low-income and moderate-income communities, really changing the community and catalyzing more development within the area. And likewise to what my colleague said, to see the happiness and the joy of the families when they're moving in, and also the intergenerational senior community and the bond and some of the benefits that they share of being next to each other. It's really impactful. Harrington Heights, this is a deal that's actually just right across the street from the building that we're standing in today. The project is under construction. We actually just had our topping out ceremony. It's a 15-story high-rise. Our partner in the deal is Alpha Project, and it was made possible, of course, through a lot of investment and through the CRA funding. And we estimate completion on that project in about a year. And then we have the Mount Etna campus, which is a total of 4 separate projects, and these projects are located in the Claremont Heights neighborhood of San Diego. They total 404 units, and they're targeted for families and for seniors. And you know what really stands out to me when I look at this portfolio of deals is just the sheer number of units that are being developed through the CRA program. There's a total of, I think, roughly about 1,500 low-income units that are being developed, low-income homes for families and for seniors, which is, I mean, the ripple effect of that throughout San Diego and the community is, the impact and the positive, you know, the positivity it brings to these folks' lives. It's a huge deal. So I think I also want to say that the total amount of investment is somewhere around $1 billion for this portfolio of deals, and again made possible by the partners in this room. And so it's just a really impactful program, and I think it's awesome that Daisy is highlighting some of these CRA dollars at work and where it can obviously be seen making an impact. Here are photos of some of the projects. All of these projects are built with exception to 2. One of the last Mount Etna project will be closing here in the next few weeks, and we'll start construction. And the Harrington Heights project across the street is currently under construction. Will be finished in about a year. Oh, that's my signal. I'll be brief. So anyway, I want to thank everybody in this room. I know all of you are dedicated to the mission of creating affordable housing and impacting the housing crisis in a positive way. So thank you all.
Daisy, did we have any additional comments from members that were lined up, or any public comment? Antonio, please.
No public comment.
And Antonio's got a comment he'd like to make.
No, I've got it again. So there's no public comment, and we have asked everyone for comments. If we want to start with the banks and then the nonprofits, but we'll start with Antonio.
No, it was just a quick comment about this presentation, and I don't want to give more word to my colleagues, but I think it's important to have obviously this data. But the stories are very important for the CRA, OCC exam. Every bank needs to provide also highlights of every market. So I think connecting to the real stories and how the amplification, not just the money that we provided, but also what was the impact, might be a good idea for the future to add to this report.
Thank you for that. Since we're asking everyone to participate to the extent that they're interested or willing to, put you on the spot first because you generally have something to say, and then we can kind of work our way around from there, which will give everyone else a chance to wind up.
Well, no point in having a seat at the table if you don't speak up. So, two key questions. One is, I'm curious about Mount Etna, that it was done in 4 separate phases. And while I recognize there's 2 typologies, seniors and families, what drove the decision to be doing this? Was it just capital available?
I would say so. Capital available, and also from a funding strategy perspective, you know, what really makes these projects work is to get funding and to get just the sheer amount.
You know what? I'm going to ask you to come up only because we're like recording, so we want to make sure that everybody can hear your answer.
So Steve, to answer your question, I would say it's driven by a few factors. From a strategic perspective, the amount of gap funding necessary to fund these deals is hard to accumulate for one large project, so it made sense to break it up into pieces from a strategy perspective, which we thought would allow us to be able to deliver the units to the community faster. And it seems like it was a strategy that worked well because, as I mentioned, we're closing on the final piece here in the next few weeks, and we'll be starting construction on the final project.
Underscores the issue earlier about like the cost of affordable housing, and when you are constrained by financing to do things in smaller increments rather than availing yourself of economies of scale. So that's just yet another factor that plays into the cost. The other thing, I guess, is back to the report, and I think the impact, as Mr. Barbosa mentions, would be valuable here. The geography of investment. Do we capture the geography in these reports? Because I think that's really critical when we look at LMI communities.
For some of the affordable housing projects, I might get a zip code or a neighborhood. And then for mortgages, small business, you would need software to pull that information, and we don't do that. We don't have that. But it's it's a great point, and it is the kind of thing that I have been talking to staff about.
Well, I would just like to say that, the good news, bad news about the affordable housing tax credit development, right? It's the main source of funding for affordable housing is through the tax code. So one of the good things is that it does not require annual appropriations of Congress. Bad news is it's subject to the tax code. So I think a real good indication of kind of the impact of CRA is you can fold it in with, we did the corporate tax cuts of 2017. Probably prior to that, we were getting tax credit pricing, over $1. And then as an impact of that, the corporate tax cuts, the tax credit pricing was, maybe 95 cents. And so it was about a 15% reduction in equity pricing to our projects based on the tax code. I would say the impact of CRA is that, all of these wonderful community lending institutions, they're motivated by complying with CRA. They have to make investments in low and moderate income communities, and they have to make investments into eligible activities. And so affordable housing is an eligible activity, and Wakeland has been really pleased, had a great relationship with these member banks. And the dollars and cents of it is that the CRA is probably increases the pricing by, say, 15%. So maybe rather than 80 cents per tax credit dollar, we get, 90, 95 cents. And so that does make a tremendous impact. We're talking about projects that have 70 million in total equity. Change between 80 cents and 92 cents is, like $8 million. It's $8 million that would otherwise maybe have to be covered by the public sector, city, county, state of California. And so the CRA really, makes that possible to our projects. Daisy asked me to talk specifically about one of my projects. Wells Fargo is the construction lender and tax credit investor on a project called Casa Anita in Chula Vista, and that showed up in Daisy's report. And so on that project, Wells Fargo did about a $30 million construction loan, $25 million of low-income housing tax credits. Really a great partner. That's a 96-unit project in Chula Vista. It's both for families with a set aside of 25% of the units for people experiencing homelessness, people in the behavioral health system, people that really need, desperate need for housing. So that's a great project. It finished up about a year and a half ago, but the permanent loan was made by Wells, made by Wells Fargo. So they were really a great partner in that project. But I can say, just other projects that may not have shown up in this snapshot of time. You know, Wakeland has had a lot of great projects with the other community lenders, investment banks here. And I can just say it makes a tremendous difference that we have this CRA. And, you know, I know from time to time we talk about CRA reform, expanding it, changing it a little bit, but the program as it exists today really does have an impact on affordable housing.
All right, so thanks for that. I'm going to go straight for the sake of time, just maybe give some highlights and list and try to acknowledge all the partner banks that are here and the ways they've supported MAC. And I'm going to go ahead and actually also mention some of the, even if they're foundation or national foundation contribution, as long as the local, I think it's worth mentioning that. So City did provide an affordable housing construction loan for MAC for the amount of almost $25 million for 160-unit affordable housing development in Spring Valley that we're rehabbing, San Martin de Porres. Wells Fargo provided a $100,000 grant for our electric vehicle access program, which is bringing electric vehicle affordable loans in education into a lot of them residents at affordable housing sites in which MAC already had moved on and put EV stations, many of them at no cost to charge. So grants like this really help us move and provide that economic stability for our residents and community at large. EV Local Foundation provided an additional $30,000 for the same effort. Wells Fargo as well. JP Morgan provided $20,000 for economic development programs, primarily focusing on economic stability and economic mobility. Bank of America Foundation provided $200,000 for our emerging leader programs at MAC, which is really developing a lot of our and earlier the presentation that talked about sort of like the middle class income. This really focused also on bringing our workforce not from entry level, from that middle, also kind of positions and growing them into higher level positions with higher incomes. So B of A worked with us. It was a 2-year grant that we've been working with, but that provided for the funding for that program. And lastly, U.S. Bank provided $30,000 in our Unidos en Finance, once again, promoting economic stability and economic growth in a lot of the programs that MAC is doing. So for all that, MAC is very grateful.
I just confused myself. From San Diego Habitat's perspective, our participation and work with the banks looks a little bit different, as it so often does because we do affordable home ownership. We've been very fortunate to receive both significant investments, mainly on the grant side, from several of the RTF member banks. Some of the ones that I think I'd like to call out that are notable include Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and U.S. Bank. And we have some growing partnerships with some of the other banks that are also represented both on the RTF and otherwise. But the other thing I'd like to call attention to is probably the more significant and sometimes more nebulous investment that the banks will make with us is because we are a mortgage because we also originate our own mortgages. We have to also monetize those on the back end. And so several of those banks and others in the region, I think with CRA being a not insignificant motivation, have elected to help us monetize those mortgages, which allows us to really play, I think, a really important role in helping some of those homeowners who might not qualify for traditional financing get over that hump and take that first step towards home ownership. So it's a little bit different, but it is certainly worth calling out.
So my colleague, I'm filling in for Enrique. Enrique helped provide me with some talking points from the bank because I work in affordable housing and sometimes I get stuck in my bubble and forget about the rest of the world. So U.S. Bank works to strengthen San Diego communities, and we care about the causes that matter to our clients and the places where they live. By continuously investing our time, talents, and resources to uplift people, we're trying to break down systemic barriers to racial and economic equity for women, people of color, and low to moderate income communities. And we support all people on their financial wellness wherever they may be in the journey. Our corporate social responsibility work centers on economic development in the communities we serve and live. Through our CRA grants and contributions, which we refer to as Community Possible Grant Program, we focus on areas centered on work, home, and play, and partner with organizations that focus on economic and workforce advancement, safe and affordable housing, and communities connected through arts and culture. For context, our grant-making guidelines did not change with the Union Bank acquisition. Economic development has always been central to our work in community. Because of the addition of Union Bank and its significant impact on the number of retail branches and our deposit market share in California, we are investing additional philanthropic dollars consistent with that growth, which I think shows up in the survey when you look at our CRA grant activity. Our community benefits plan is a 5-year commitment beginning in 2022 and ending in December 2027. We will have made at least $200 million in charitable investments statewide at the end of that 5-year term. In addition to our grant programs, this year U.S. Bank debuted Access Commitment in San Diego, which is our long-term approach to help close the wealth gap for underserved communities. This commitment to listening and learning from our nonprofit partners through both informal and formal channels, for example, our National Community Advisory Committee and our local advisory board, ensures that we harness what we hear and help this community mobilize resources to lead the way to success. Finally, we remain proud of the expertise of our Community Development Corporation, Impact Finance, in offering affordable housing and community development lending solutions. As seen in the survey, tax credit investments and syndications, loans, and other financial solutions have helped create affordable housing, spur economic activity in underserved communities, develop renewable sources of energy, and strengthen community development financial institutions. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the San Diego community via the San Diego Reinvestment Task Force. And then I'll just add my own 2 cents at the end of that. I think at least as it pertains to affordable housing financing, it helps us a lot as a bank to be able to work with trusted partners over and over, such as Peter and his team, Jamil and his team, Eric and his team. We've been able to provide tax credit investments and construction loans to help build those developments, and we look forward to continued investment with all of these partners.
My name is Irene. I'm with International Rescue Committee, and I also got some talking point from Mitch, who manages our programs. I only manage the business development side of it, so I'll talk about the workforce and financial capabilities, including the Small Business Development Center. So through our RATIF partners, the banking industry, we have received over $400,000 in grant, which has gone on to support our financial literacy initiatives that has helped with financial coaching of our new Americans. As you all know, we serve refugee, immigrant, and underserved communities. So this funding has helped support our credit building initiatives, financial coaching, as well as workforce development. It has also helped to build our small business development owners within the communities. So your partnership has been really pivotal in helping to enhance the critical services that are needed at the entrance of our new Americans when they come in. Most often when our clients come in indoors, they don't have access to banking, not because they don't have knowledge. Some of them don't trust the system because where they came from, either the banking institution didn't it was not available to them, or because of war had been disrupted and that knowledge gap had happened on the way coming here. And because of the funding that we received from our banking partners help allows us to be able to provide those needed services as they enter our programs. These are the banking partners that have been supporting the IRC, the U.S. Bank, Wells Fargo, Capital One, and JP Morgan has been the biggest supporters of our clients. As I speak, we just got $100,000 from JP Morgan to support our childcare businesses, learn about strengthening and a better way of improving their business operations. So that's from IRC.
Hi, my name is Jimmy. I work for Liz San Diego, so I'm in charge of the housing and lending department. So Liz is not a bank, we're a CDFI, so we do a lot of the lending on the pre-development and acquisition phase. So I work with many of the people here. And so basically the lending before the banks come in for construction and permanent loan, before they obtain the tax credit. So one of the program I do want to talk about for this is our first-time home buyer program down payment assistance. So basically, we work with banks and private funder. So the program, so we provide 40,000 down payment assistance, and then one of the requirement we have for the bank is they have to contribute at least $9,000. So for the low and moderate income folks, they can get close to 50,000 for their down payment and closing costs for our program. And then since it launched in 2021, almost 3 years, so far we have funded 83 families so far. So.
Good afternoon, Darren Houston with Citibank. I'm a community lending officer on the mortgage side here in San Diego. There's 3 of us in total covering San Diego for Citibank. I'm charged specifically with the diverse real estate associations as well as new home builders. Our statement from Citibank is we're committed to the neighborhoods of San Diego and continue to finance affordable housing projects every year. Affordable housing financing are complex and take time to close, causing the amount of financing to fluctuate from year to year. I can speak personally that we are truly committed to change the numbers and for me personally to provide access to credit and provide funding for diverse communities. So we are committed to this cause. Thank you.
Hey everyone, Antonio Barbosa with Wells Fargo, and I think I'm on the go off script. I hope we don't get in trouble. But I think I wanted to remind everyone that, and Daisy, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are, I think, the one of 2 counties in the country that goes through this exercise. I think it's just San Diego and New York. So for me personally, and I think for my colleagues, it's interesting the process because we have to go through a complicated process to explain everyone what is the RTF in order for us to get all this information, because this information is mostly gathered for the OCC. So every time we have to ask for the information, we get a lot of questions. So it's an interesting process. Having said that, I think for us it's also a great tool because we can go to different lines of business and show where we are. As you know, well, we have the hat of the bank, but also we are advocates of the community. So this tool gives us the opportunity to go to a lines of business and kind of put a little pressure on what's going on, why the numbers are not that good. And so this is a great, again, a great tool for us as also as an advocates of the community. I just wanted also to mention in terms of this data, and Daisy mentioned that we were able to bring a multi-year grant that actually is not part of the numbers for this report because they are not CRA qualified. But this grant was the one trying to support that, what it was mentioned, the middle market. So those grants were, that grant that we brought, the multi-year grant, was to help housing affordability in the region, but trying to approach it and supporting that middle, that in terms of CRA is not part of the report. And just one more thing, also a good thing for us is that the community lending and investment team, the national team is, part of the team is based in San Diego. So that is also a good tool for me because they know the nonprofits here. It's not that difficult to advocate to bring the money. Actually, just yesterday in Carlsbad, we did the river cutting of a project in Carlsbad, just across of the golf course. And this is an affordable housing project with a $20 million investment from Wells Fargo. And I was like, this is what we want to see, people that you don't need to live in a low-income neighborhood. You can live across the street from a really nice golf course in Carlsbad and still have access to this opportunity. So that's kind of my comment.
Hello, Angela Zappia from Accessity. Thank you so much for compiling the report. Great to see the data from last year, but also just the trends year over year. And thank you to those engaged in the CRA work with the banks. Accessity helps small businesses, primarily women-owned, low to moderate income individuals, and entrepreneurs of color. And all of the banks that sit on RTF are supporters of Accessity and help contribute to our impact. The broad impact that they helped us achieve last year was dispersing $11.9 million through almost 400 small business loans to entrepreneurs, and also helped us provide education to 4,700 small business owners as well. And so the overall investment from the banks through grants was $840,000 last year. But I did want to highlight some of the specific examples and impacts that that giving got. So U.S. Bank actually made a 3-year commitment. So we received $250,000 as the first installment of that last year, but it's going to total $750,000 by the end of next year. A historic grant made by U.S. Bank to Accessity, just in terms of our history of their giving, the largest we've received from them. And it's really going to help with capacity building, or is helping with capacity building, because it's general operating support. So it really helps us scale and grow. We also received $260,000 as the final installment of a 2-year commitment from JP Morgan Chase. And that helped Accessity rewrite its underwriting grid, which helped us increase the maximum loan size on our rapid loan product. It used to be capped at $8,000, and now it's up to $25,000 because of that contribution. And that product primarily reaches low to moderate income individuals, entrepreneurs of color, at higher rates than our fully underwritten loan. So that's having a big impact to be able to increase the maximum loan size on that. They also helped us implement technologies and softwares that helped us increase staff efficiency, and as well as improve the client experience, help folks get their funding faster. And then Wells Fargo, I wanted to highlight the $125,000 that we received last year. It helped us not only support the microlending program, but also the education that we couple the lending with. Wells Fargo supports the Accessity Academy for Entrepreneurial Success. That's not new. We've been partnering on it for more than 10 years now. And each year it serves about 25 to 30 aspiring small business owners. So it helps them launch or formalize their small business through 10 weeks of curriculum. By the time they graduate, they have written their business plan, they've written their marketing plan, they have their financial projections, and they're able to receive up to $5,000 in capital to help them get started. And it's not just the monetary commitment, because Wells Fargo is also there helping us provide the education. They're there the first week to welcome the students. They come in and provide education on business banking, and then they're there at graduation to celebrate those small business owners as well. And then we also were able to receive $175,000 from Wells Fargo. It was a California-wide grant opportunity that helped us leverage the CDFI Equitable Recovery Program support that we received, as well as collaborate with another CDFI based in Northern California to really help impact small businesses across the state.
Have some questions or take them here.
I do, thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much for, Daisy, for the data, and then for the context around, what this money is actually doing in our communities. I appreciate that. I do have a question around, and thank you to our guests here that have gone over your projects in our respective communities. It's good to see like the investment, what it is doing, the accumulation of investment is important, because sometimes we make these decisions and, this project is here, that project is there, and to see it all together is very helpful. So thank you for being here and sharing with us. I just have a question. I want to focus on the grants, which is much smaller piece of the pie, right? I think we heard a lot about what this funding, loans, and the like are doing in our communities around housing. The grant piece, as especially experiencing the floods January 22nd, and how community-based organizations really came in and provide immediate and rapid response for community members. I'm thinking about the discretionary funding that my office has now, where we often partner with funders to kind of provide a match to some of the discretionary funding that we give to community-based organizations so that they can have more impact. I am just wondering kind of how you all deploy your grant funding, like what goes into that decision-making process. Is it a process, even with the CRA kind of guidelines, that is open for, partnering with government entities to have some sort of match with these community-based organizations? We give to veterans groups, we give to arts and culture, we give to neighborhood revitalization groups, we give to financial literacy, we give to all kinds of nonprofit organizations, big and small, health groups. So I just want to know, just generally speaking, is that something that you all might be open to, something you've already thought about? Just kind of want to get a better gauge of like how those decisions are made.
Yeah, and obviously it's super open to work together. In terms of Wells Fargo, we have 3 pillars: housing affordability, small business growth, and financial education. If it's connected to any of those 3, for sure we can collaborate. The decisions, it's kind of my job in order to kind of do the community needs assessment, the relationship manager with the nonprofits, knowing which nonprofits are the ones making the most impact in the community. But for sure, if you also have money that it's targeted to those pillars, we can work together and amplify the impact. So usually I try to do this work at the beginning of the year. So if you want me to connect with your team and also kind of check what are your plans, for sure we can do so.
Absolutely, that'd be awesome. And, we may be able to coordinate just timing and everything else. So, okay, thank you for that. And although you were the only one to speak up, I'll be reaching out to everybody. Thank you very much. No, I think it's just something to think about and I know that you're giving out more grants than what we've heard about in this circle, right? I totally understand that, but we have a whole mechanism also set up that might be because our job is to be out in the entirety of our communities. We might even have some folks maybe you haven't really worked with yet. We go through a vetting process that includes, a lot of requirements. So, I think they're sometimes smaller groups, sometimes larger, but upstanding, and, we know they have a reputation for doing the work. So it may just be another opportunity for all of us. Okay. Yes.
So I didn't get a chance to acknowledge some of the activities that the banks here. Well, I started off and asked questions. So, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't stand here as ungrateful for what we are being provided with. Our primary supporters, I think, in order, U.S. Bank is number 1, JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo are actually neck and neck in terms of levels of support right now. And they've been very consistent over the years. And that's one of the things I want to highlight is that these banks are not capricious like many philanthropic funders which makes it really hard to do the work. The work that they have supported includes all of our education work around the Affordable Housing Management Program, around our supportive housing roundtable, our resident services trainings, our conference, our recent fundamentals training that help community members and organizations learn how to be better partners in affordable housing development. So all of that education is key, and then of course the core funding that allows us to simply communicate these things out to the world, whether with our own memberships or the world out there. So I absolutely appreciate the ongoing support that these funds have provided. I will say, multi-year grants are gold in this world. As much as you've been consistent, multi-year grants are the gold standard. And we appreciate very much the support we've had, and we've been able to leverage the money we get from the banks with other entities to really have impacts in the community. And so for that, we're thankful and appreciate the opportunity to speak up.
Just quick comment. I want to go something back to what Antonio mentioned earlier, and it's mainly a question to you, but you talked about the importance of maybe this report also bringing sort of that, the actual story, the actual impact, right? I know this is a meeting and time is a constraint, and we tend to bring some of those kind of bullets, and we might report at individual levels to those that are giving us, but I do see a lot of value in being able to add a component on how do we bring all those elements that, I mean, everything you spoke to resonates, I think, with all of us here at the table in our community, but I think it is important to find a way to also bring that kind of impact through a story and find a way to put it in a report. And I love the point about geographical sort of also impact would be fantastic, but just wanted to acknowledge your comment. I'm going home with that. I think it's really important to find a way to do so. And if there's anything any of us can do to support that, even, sort of as a supplement to this, by all means, just let us know.
In this, thank you for contributing in this way, and thank you, Supervisor Montgomery Stepp, for encouraging the conversation to look this way. Daisy, for all the work that you did to help make it happen. I think this is a pretty robust conversation and definitely has my gears turning. So thank you for that. I will now hand it over.
Thank you very much. So let's go to our final item now. I'm going to call Eric Henson and Karen Montefiore Federico from my office up to go over this last item of the year. And they'll talk about kind of a little bit of the background and their brainstorming and then talking to me about the idea of a legislative platform for the task force and just kind of where it came from, based on our conversations, and then we'll have a discussion after that. So I'll turn it over to Eric and Karen.
Can people hear me? Okay. Hello, board. Thank you for the introduction, Supervisor. My name is Eric Henson. I'm a policy advisor for County of San Diego District 4's office. And Karen?
My name is Karen, Senior Community Rep for Supervisor Montgomery Stepp.
Yes, and what we have before you is a proposed reinvestment task force legislative platform. So we'll take it away and kind of go into detail as to like why this, abstract item is in front of you today. First, this is just our agenda for the topic areas that'll be covered that encompass like the theme of like the need for a legislative platform. I know, there are some like implicit and like gray areas, when it comes to like federal advocacy, but we're gonna cover all those different levels. But before the task force, first, obviously, we have like what is a legislative platform? Why does RTF need a platform? What would an ideal platform for RTF look like? What are the opportunities and challenges of establishing a platform? and the questions to be considered, and what are some of the next steps. All right. So there is no universal definition or language that indicates how like institutions like develop their legislative platforms. But just through content analysis, as you know, for example, County of San Diego has a legislative platform. The City of San Diego has a legislative platform. This is across different municipalities and other agencies. But through like our content analysis and looking at different platforms, typically the language you see is about monitoring and tracking different types of legislation or programs that are relevant to different, I guess you can say, like subject areas of policy and like implementation. It's also that was also what was found in that content analysis is just responding, due to time, because we hear often about the fiscal year and meeting certain deadlines to apply for grants or implementation of policy. So that's something to keep in mind. And then obviously that last bullet point up there talks about securing funding and political support. That's something that we found across the different documents, and there's some footnotes there that show the different platforms we had looked at. But overall, because Community Reinvestment Act, I'm just saying from personal experience and doing like advocacy, through our work and coming to planning groups and town councils, a lot of people do not know what the Community Reinvestment Act is. So when you think about that, I think it does express the need for like how are we actually looking at policies and programs that are relevant to that mission. And right here, we will go over some of the findings that we came across in terms of like presentation and aesthetics of the platforms. Karen, would you like to take away?
Yes, so for the purpose of this legislative platform that we're bringing forward to this task force, we looked at the existing legislative platforms and programs from MTS, from SANDAG, from City of San Diego, County of San Diego. As former city employees, we have delved into the city's legislative platform, very robust, lots of pages, lots of words, very great. But looking at MTS and SANDAG, their versions were just more cleaner. And for the purpose of the public, we want to make sure that the legislative platform is easy to read, digestible, and also serves as a source of reference for our nonprofit organizations, as you all do advocacy works at different levels, for you to have something to bring and reference. So we looked at those examples, and we have our draft legislative platform really comes from our transportation agencies using MTS and SANDAG just for its ease of read. So on the right-hand side, they point to where they are focusing their advocacy, whether it's local, state, or federal, and noting which one, S for state, F for federal, L for local, and subject areas. So grouping the different legislative actions by subject area.
And to crystallize that, why does Reinvestment Task Force need a platform? Earlier I did kind of detail just the policy itself. We here, being involved in the work, are very familiar with it, but again, through that time and like outreach through our work, we, when I say we, I mean Karen and I and even staff have received like interest from people at the planning groups and just constituents in general. They have often asked us what is CRA and even have expressed interest in attending some of these meetings. But as far as what would it mean for the task force itself and and the partners involved. As you may know, there was the final rule for CRA that went through in 2023 October, and there are some new requirements involved. For example, there's expansion of facility assessment areas, and then we have community development financing. Tests now including expansions of native lands, sovereign nations, weather resiliency. Like earlier, the floods were mentioned, and thinking about like climate resilient communities altogether, and how are we looking to have like CRA activity around that. The ongoing support for special purpose credit programs, and then there are some retail lending test revisions. That I don't know too much about, but I did think it was an area that we don't get to cover that often, at the task force. So it's something that's definitely like worth looking into. And just to further show like the breadth of activities that could occur through advocacy services and lobbying even. These are just different departments. Like I know a lot of the activity that we had, just as we saw in the survey, encompasses like affordable housing, correct? And there are some implications with HUD, of course. But when we start thinking about like economic development itself, there are those opportunities, with the U.S. EDA, so Economic Development Administration. There's a state level version of that at the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And I won't go through the rest of the list, but for example, I actually used to intern at the Housing Commission, and I'm familiar with the Achievement Academy and the great work that's done there. But I was familiar with some of the activities around individual development accounts, for example, and some of those match savings programs that could lead to an individual to develop an escrow and do things that they needed for their families, right? So that's just areas that we could expand in terms of CRA activity, just like we talked about in the last item around that report. And these are just some of the subject areas that are in the legislative platform. Karen, you did a great job outlining it. Would you like to just quickly go over the subject areas?
Just very quickly, so the legislative platform is broken down by these subject areas, which are taken from the RTF website, different areas that we all have different speakers represent and give presentations about. So those being affordable housing and desegregation, 2, supporting small business growth and equitable economic development, 3, consumer education and counseling, 4, fair access to financial services, and 5, support legislation of other agencies and organizations. This is a draft legislative program. There are opportunities, and we hope to get input from the other nonprofit organizations here with the different work that you do in your communities and in your field. So there is work to include those into the program.
And obviously, as we mentioned, this is a proposed draft legislative program, and there obviously would have to be some considerations to review. Obviously, when we think about legislative platforms, like as again, some of the agencies they have either contracts, for lobbying services to track these kind of activities that go year round. Due to the structure of the JPA, we're not too sure like how that would look like in implementation. Correct. So it's something just to think about and consider. Obviously, staff and capacity time. Again, we are a JPA and a much smaller one compared to some of the other agencies that we mentioned. So it's just something to think about in terms of where support could be offered. CRA compliance. Obviously, we heard about all the great stories that were here, today. There was some, mentioning of CRA, reform, and I know that's like something that is kind of risky. Like it's just a an honest discussion to have. Just something to think about as we talk about what advocacy looks like, and are there conflicts for banks in that advocacy. It's something to just think about. Now for the opportunities. The good thing is when Karen and I were putting this together, we just looked at the City of San Diego and County of San Diego's legislative platforms, and obviously the transportation agency's platforms, and some of them already have like these themes of economic development and things around small businesses. So that's something that can be utilized already. There's opportunities for reinvestment task force committees. Because as we mentioned, staff and capacity time can be a challenge. So it could be an all hands on deck opportunity for members of the task force to monitor or bring up those opportunities for advocacy. Again, just covering the different state, federal levels of policy to track, different types of programs, as we mentioned, just beyond housing and small business as well. There's other opportunities to look at, and lastly, just be able to inform the Reinvestment Task Force work program. I know every year we have the opportunity about what topics we want to cover, and this is like a good way to be like a North Star, just to track the activities that happen with CRA and if there's any opportunities for support. And last, these are just some questions, that further, detail those challenges and opportunities. As we mentioned earlier, there could be some, legal challenges with, using lobbying services between the different agencies. We're not too sure about that yet. Again, with tracking legislation require more staff. It is something that at the city and county that when our staff have been involved, there's government affairs teams that deal with this, right? So it's something to consider for what RTF may have to look into and realize. And then obviously. We mentioned capacity. It is a lot of work just to follow this year around. But again, this is an opportunity to inform our future meetings and just having like a way to track those activities. So next steps, complete the draft for review and see what results from that, so we could adopt this and potentially have it inform our work programs. And talk about those future opportunities. If it does require more capacity, maybe that could be a committee thing. But as far as the activities to monitor and track RTF activities, it may require more staff, and those are things to consider. But again, thanks for listening to us, and look forward to continue to work with RTF staff.
Thank you very much. I just want to give a little bit of additional context for this idea. Said that I think it was our very first meeting of this year, and I've been sitting on this task force since I've been an elected official. I think this is my 6th year, and it's always been very helpful. And we've also been able to do quite a few things, like the first time homebuyer assistance. Some of those ideas were birthed out of this, this task force, and a lot of other things we've been able to do. But two things. One is we don't necessarily always get, I think, the attention that we deserve for the work, even the stories that we heard today. And also just the focus sometimes, because there's so much that we can cover and go over, and so much impacting the various issue or subject matters that we talk about here, it is sometimes hard to stay focused. And in our first meeting this year, it was a really good information with a really good meeting with a lot of good information. But I left like, okay, what do I do with that? Right? And everything right now, especially entering 2025, we all, I think, need to have particular focus and how we're going to work together and continue to build our communities with what is potentially ahead of us. So for me, having something that I can, whether or not, we'll work out the legalities of it, but, if I take a trip to Sacramento or DC, probably not DC anytime soon, but that I have something, to cross-check with the county's legislative platform and something that we can, kind of work together on and hold ourselves accountable so that there is additional purpose in what we do in our meetings and we can kind of point to that purpose because again we've done a lot of things that have touched a lot of families, but how are we like keeping track of that for ourselves, right? So that we don't get discouraged in coming and being with each other, right? So anyway, that was additional context behind this idea. Let me just check to make sure there's no public comments because I know we probably have some hard stops at 4. Okay, so I'll go to members of the task force if you have any feedback at all. And again, next steps would just be take it home, look it over, see what you would like to add, if anything at all. If you're totally opposed to it, we take all the feedback from everyone. So, but I think to begin the next year, the kind of solidifying what a platform would look like if we agree to continue forward with some kind of platform. If we need to call it something else, that's fine. If the banks have, if the banks have particular legal issues, let us know. We're okay, but we need to have the conversation. So that would be our next steps, and then I'll open it up for any member feedback. And Antonio, do you want to say?
No, just you already covered that. I think all the banks will have to go through all the hoops around all the legalities, and every bank has different timings, and so I think the challenge is going to be since we have banks and nonprofits, and sometimes we have different agendas. I think that's going to be the kind of the challenge to go through the internal process of getting green lights for everything we're going to be trying to do. So just keep that in mind.
And yes, and based on, based on quorum here and based on if we move forward and there have to be abstentions on the record or something like that, it's a body and it's a task force. We have to comply with the Brown Act, right? We're supposed to at some level make some decisions. And so we can also work legally around like what it would mean for if banks or nonprofits, based on what your board's direction is, have to recuse or anything like that. Steve.
So I think that's a really compelling idea because this is a unique room in San Diego County when you look at the expertise that is brought around here and the influence that's brought here, and to have a coherent legislative package is really critical for the very reasons you stated. We are all going to different rooms, different offices, different meetings, and especially those of us who are nonprofit members who have liberty to do so, to speak up on something that is informed by the discussion of the banks, whether you formally voted on it or not. You're bringing your expertise here, and we can use that expertise. And I wouldn't want to let the resource question of what does it look to implement a full-scale, legislative program. Yes, it requires all those resources you talked about, but absent those in early years, we can still do the advocacy if amongst us. There are enough people at the table who I can go to MTS, I can go to the county, I can go to Sandag, as can many of you. And so I'm very enthusiastic about the idea, and I think we should not stop ourselves because we don't have the resources to do the full-blown vision. I think we work within the resources we have and can be very effective because, for one, we can speak directly to the county here, we can speak to the city, and we can deploy ourselves to these different bodies. We're in the process right now at the Federation of developing our legislative agenda, which involves a lot of discussions with a variety of parties, not all of whom are able to actually speak in this public forum. So it is not unprecedented. I think what is unprecedented is for this body to take such a bold move. And I'm really, really excited about the notion.
Thank you for that feedback, Peter. Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I would just add that we're in a lot of rooms having a range of conversations around things that are important to us specifically, and I think leveraging any conversations we have here in this platform and also us hopefully being a leverager of the conversations that are here in this room, I think would be great. So having it be focused and intentional would give me some direction on, oh yeah, that's something that I also care about. And when people see Habitat and hear from Habitat, they'll also know that there's something that might come from another platform that they should be able to think about. So I think, just to agree with Steve, I don't think we should let sort of the question about all of the resources maybe not being there keep us from at least identifying what we would like to talk about and elevate, because there's no reason for me not to be doing that. So.
Thank you. Peter, you got anything?
I don't know if this is a part of the official purview of the task force. What struck me is, we have great representatives from the city and county as part of this board. I think I would like to hear, maybe it's an additional item to the platform, is, how the city, how the county are doing on things like racial equity, diversity. I know the city, and probably the county as well, have departments that have been established. Me as a community member who's got a job, I haven't been able to follow and take stock of what the city's been doing and how it's been advancing, the goals that we think are important as part of this committee. So I don't know if that's a possibility that we could, we could be another body that the city and the county could be accountable to. I'd like to hear about that.
That's a good point. Go ahead, Eric. You have a response to that?
Yeah. I know that usually around, I want to say it's either September, or October. That's kind of like when the discussions start as far as the legislative platforms, like at the city and the county of San Diego as well. Usually, like on our individual, office levels, like we're able to contribute to those discussions. But again, I think that comment, like hearing that here at the task force, that could inform those platforms like directly. And that was like actually one point or area in the proposed legislative platform for RTF was to support other agencies' legislative platforms. So that would be in spirit with what was prepared.
I guess I'd just say, I know that so much of what we do about advancing equity, diversity, opportunity, it's about having a vision and a policy. The other thing is sometimes it's about a budget too, right? So maybe the task force could be, advocates for, city budget process, county budget process as well.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Anyone else? Irene?
But I feel like I don't need to be mic'd. I can just say.
Recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was saying I really like the idea. I think it's a great idea to be able. There's a lot of decisions that I made in this room, and sometimes they stay here. Like you said, they're not communicated outside, but it's just having a platform where you can share with people outside of this room, and they're able to be able to access it. It's very important, and oftentimes we ask for public comments. There's no public comments that come in. Most of the topics, the items that we speak about, I don't know, it's because people are not aware of what we do here, and having that platform will be able to help enhance the participation of the public or not. That's just my take, but I think it's a good idea.
Thank you for that feedback. Okay, I was going to say, Darren, do you have anything? I'm going to say something. Yes, go, please.
I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I moved here in 2018 from Spain, and it's taken me 6 years to get to this meeting, to be invited here, to be a participant of affordable housing. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity of being here, and also I'm very grateful for the work that everyone's doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. You have anything, Council President?
Very quickly. I want to say thank you for your leadership here. of trying to make this the most meaningful convening possible. That I know that was happening before I was able to participate this year. I've definitely appreciated being able to do that alongside you. And you have my commitment to work with you and your team to try to incorporate this into the city's legislative agenda as well. Obviously, we have the agenda for the RTF, but there's also the legislative agendas for our respective, for the city, for the county, and being able to lean in, I think, can only advance the likelihood that some of this is able to be incorporated. So thank you again for your leadership and the work of Eric and Karen on this. I know Jeffrey talks to you all a lot, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It is listed as a discussion item. I think just there's a consensus, I think, that we'll just kind of look and review and come back with feedback and then have solidify a little bit more at the beginning of the year. So I don't think, just to make sure, I don't want to put the banks in a position where they have to vote on something that, may not, you haven't taken up the ladder a bit. So I think if everyone's okay, or Daisy, if you're okay with that, do you want to go ahead and do a motion? Because it's listed as a discussion.
So we can't, right?
So
Brown Act.
we have to do a motion then. The info
It
items
wasn't,
are
it wasn't agendized as an action item, so I'm
and
not
it's
sure
a
that we can
discussion.
take.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that's perfect.
So everyone
then.
has an out.
So we have
But homework.
we have a consensus within the task force. I appreciate everyone for listening and engaging, and of course, like I said, we're very open to any suggestions, any critiques, any feedback, and so we'll be engaging respectively the city and county, along with all of you. All right. So I think that concludes our meeting and then our meetings for the year. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been a really, really good year. I want to thank Daisy again for just really bringing us together in such purposeful and fulfilling conversations. Eric and Karen, thank you so much for everything and for the presentation. And that does conclude our meeting. We're adjourned at 4:04. Thank you, everyone.